This meeting is being recorded.
Okay.
Okay, so we're good, Dan?
Well, let me change my view. I got a little bitty PowerPoint and I got a lot of pictures over here.
So it's not the full screen. What's going on in Jocassee Gorges?
It is.
Yeah, it's just a little screen. Maybe
Dan, it's like yours. That. It's full screen on mine.
And full screen on mine too.
Okay, well, it was me.
Okay.
You're forgiven.
That's right.
Well, thank y'all for having me. I appreciate that, and I'm sorry that I'm definitely not a technology whiz. So I appreciate Dan shepherding me through this. Since y'all are the Native Plant Society, I felt compelled to talk about plants a little bit. So I reached out to our botanist, Keith Bradley, who I know that y'all are all familiar with. He's a great plants person. And he sent me a message about our upstate botanist, Samantha Tessel, who's been spending some time up in the Jocassee Gorges, as well as in the heritage preserves that are embedded within Jocassee Gorges, and that would be Waterfall, East Atoy, and Laurel Fork. And Keith says she's been making a lot of great discoveries of new native plants in South Carolina, as well as lots of new rare plant populations. In Jocassee, he says there's some fascinating tentative things that they're waiting for. They're waiting for some plants to flower, and they're also waiting on some more scientific study. Some plants that are under study by Samantha and her colleagues are an unusual alum root, which is pictured here, the Heuchera species at Cove Gap. And then there is a new, or might not be a new, but a very interesting heartleaf, Hexastylus, which is there. One of the interesting things about this heartleaf, and I'll show you in the next slide, according to the notes from Samantha, and you can see the ruler there. That species has a large flange and constricted calyx tube. Now, this is a fern that I'm sure y'all are all familiar with. This is the one that kind of made the East Atoy Gorges famous, the Tunbridge filmy fern that is nowhere else in North America. And it has been in a decline for years, according to Keith. But he says that Samantha and some others have found that it has rebounded, which is it's really great news, since DNR is the only steward for this species in North America. She also found a fern there that is extremely rare in the state that I think I have a picture of here. Yes, the Appalachian shoestring fern, Viteria appalachiana. And at Laurel Fork Heritage Preserve, Samantha and Keith found a new population of a really interesting vine that climbs high into trees, a pipe vine. I don't think I have a picture of that one. Now, another thing at Cove Gap that Keith mentioned was a new and large colony of glade fern. And Keith says that Samantha may have also found a scarlet bee balm, Monarda didyma, which is a beautiful wildflower, and she's waiting. Excuse me, she's waiting for it to flower. But if it is what she thinks it is, it will be the first confirmed native wild population in South Carolina. So as you can see, botanically, Jocassee continues to reveal new things to us. Now, getting to the Sassafras Mountain Overlook, which we celebrated the 3rd anniversary for in April, which was really hard to believe. It seemed like, and I know y'all probably think this too, that it took forever to get that overlook up there, and it did. It took a good decade of the construction was only a year and a half, but the 8 or 9 years leading up to that it took a lot of time. So, but I'm sure that most of you that are watching this have probably been up there. I'd say likely been up there. If you have not been up there, you need to get up there and see that place. It's just spectacular. I never knew how much I was going to grow attached to it. I love going. I never miss a chance to go up there. It looks different in all seasons. I've been going up there a lot in the last 6 months or so, and I'll show you why in a second. We've been trying to produce in-house some panels, north, south, east, and west, that will show you the topographic landmarks, the highest peaks or the familiar peaks, things like Lake Jocassee, Lake Kiwi, the Young Life Camp, things like that. Well, it just hasn't worked out. And we finally, I talked with our deputy director for wildlife and freshwater fisheries, and I told Emily, I said, Emily, I need some help on this. And so we've hired a designer, one that y'all may be familiar with, Melanie Amick. She's done a lot of work for state parks, and she came very highly recommended by Terry Hurley of South Carolina State Parks. So she's working on some panels. In just a minute, y'all are going to be the first non-DNR people that have seen these things. Now, they're not ready yet. They're not finished. So if you have some critiques, you can let me know. But I want y'all to see what they're going to look like, because I'm pretty excited about them. I do have a couple of drone shots of the overlook that I want you to see before I get to those panels. That they were taken by Danielle Kent, our chief videographer from Columbia, and some of them she took during the leaf season are just beautiful. This is another drone shot that Danielle took. But every time I look at pictures of the overlook from like a drone or from afar, they almost don't look real. It almost looks like it's a model. It's just a beautiful design, so simple but so compelling. And what a view! All right, here's the two drone shots that were taken in November during the height of the leaf season, and they're just beautiful. There's one looking, toward, you can see Lake Jocassee and of course Kiwi down below there, but just a beautiful shot. And here's another taken at the same time, but I think from a little further away. Okay, now we get to the panels. And like I said, y'all don't be too critical, because these aren't finished yet, but I hope they will be soon, and that we'll have them mounted up at the top of the overlook. So people, we have a couple of, we have one hourly up there that works. Her name is Kaylin. And of course, Rusty still comes up there. Even I think he's also working for us. He just can't, he doesn't want to leave. He loves it up there. And those people get peppered with questions all the time. What's that? What's that? What's that? So hopefully these panels will alleviate some of that for the folks that work up there. All right, so here's the view. Let's see, this is the view to the west. So you can see we're identifying the familiar mountains, most of them familiar, and then the landmarks like Whiteside Mountain, of course, which everybody sees and wants to know about. You can see half of Toxaway Mountain, which is pretty recognizable, but you see half of it on the right side there. But then you see some other familiar places like Jocassee, Raven Bald, which is pretty amazing. I really regret that you can't see all the way to the left, so that you could see Currahee Mountain in Toccoa, Georgia, which is pretty recognizable. But we just didn't have the width on that to be able to get that in. Okay, so here is to the south, and you see on the far left side there, the two second and third highest mountains in the state are points. Actually, some folks claim that Hickory Nut Mountain is the tallest mountain within South Carolina, which it is. Sassafras being on the border of North and South Carolina, but there you can see hickory nut and pinnacle, and then some other familiar landmarks there. And it also, this particular panel tells the really interesting story about Sassafras being a tri-point, where water can end up in 3 different places, 2 in the Atlantic and 1 in the Gulf, which is pretty amazing. Here's the famous northern view, which shows the Blue Ridge Parkway. It sounds like y'all will be there on Saturday. Hope it's cooler. Should be. It should particularly be cooler up at places like Richard Balsam Mountain, over 6,000 feet. And Mount Pisgah is about maybe the most recognizable spot looking to the north. So when this panel talks about it being Sassafras being on the state line, part of the Eastern Continental Divide, and it's just a really important place. And then the last one, which is to the east, not a lot of mountains you can see here. You would have a really nice view of Table Rock Mountain if those trees in the Greenville watershed were removed. Maybe that'll happen someday. I don't know. That's probably not going to happen in my tenure with South Carolina DNR. You can see where Caesar's Head. I'm not sure you can actually see Caesar's Head. If you look really close in the photograph, you can see the tower, the communications tower, or whatever kind of tower there is there at Caesar's Head. And of course, there's the weather station there that we have a link to on this particular panel. Okay, so there's the 4 panels. I hope y'all liked them, and hopefully we'll get them finished and ironed out and put up before too terribly much longer. All right, I'm going to talk just a little bit about some management activities on Jocassee Gorges, continuing to burn up there on a pretty regular basis. Mark Hall, Rick Huffman mentioned Mark Hall there for 2 decades and did a lot of prescribed burning. Mark was a great proponent of prescribed fire, and it's just something that hopefully we're always going to be able to do. The objectives of prescribed fire include diversification of wildlife habitat, maintaining ecological integrity, and then reducing the available fuel that, of course, prevents catastrophic wildfires. Mark used to like to say that for many of these ecosystems, it's not a matter of if they will burn, but rather when. And so by doing prescribed burning, we like to choose the when. I think that was pretty, the fact that those mountains need to burn was demonstrated by that 2016 Pinnacle Mountain fire that burned 10,000 acres up there. And if it hadn't started raining, I'm not sure that thing would not still be burning. I didn't think we were ever going to get that fire put out. Here's Matt Norris, one of our wildlife folks at SCDNR. This was during a burn in March that the Nature Conservancy played a big role in. They have some folks that on a burn team that they loan to all types of agencies, and they had 4 young folks that were, wow, they could get up and down those hills and light those fires, and it was wonderful to have them there. It was a great, sort of combined agency effort. I think we burned about 150 acres on that particular day that the Nature Conservancy. Total acreage burned this year in Jocassee Gorges is 306 acres, which is not real high, but I think the weather conspired a lot this year. It was pretty wet during the times when we had folks that were available to burn, and mountain burns takes a lot of people because there's so many twisty turny fire lines, and you got so many places where the fire can get away. You have to have a good many people to watch it. And so that's just always a big management priority is to do prescribed burning up there. Rick was speaking earlier about Tom Swangam. I had pulled out a quote from Tom out of an article that he wrote for the Jocassee newsletter, and I wanted to read it to y'all because it kind of gives South Carolina DNR's perspective on the Jocassee Gorges, or, you know, I live in Pickens County. My wife teaches at Pickens High School. Nobody at Pickens High School calls this area the Jocassee Gorges. They all call it the horse pasture. So I usually refer to it as Jocassee Gorges / the horse pasture. But here's what Tom said, and showing this beautiful jumping off rock view reminds me that the roads up there have to be maintained. And after the Jocassee was named one of the 50 last greatest places by National Geographic, you know, before that happened, that the road jumping off rock was only open seasonally. But some legislators decided, and I think wisely in retrospect, that we needed to leave that place open year round. So the road implications increased tenfold. And we have 3 full-time folks that manage 33,000 acres up there. And so they spend a lot of their time managing the roads, keeping the roads open for people to go to places like this. So it's an important thing. But here's what Tom had to say about the Jocassee area. He said, Jocassee is not a wilderness area. It is a managed forest. It has been impacted by human activities for a long time. The forest has changed significantly in the previous 2 centuries. One of SCDNR's primary objectives is to restore the forest to the species that originally occurred here. This will require management, including tree harvest, tree planting, intentional fire, and protection from invasive species. So Rick, there's that invasive species part that we're still and probably always will be fighting against. Okay, some recent activities that I wanted to include them in case you didn't hear about this. This is in the new Jocassee newsletter is online. The published version has not shown up in mailboxes yet, but it's been online for a few weeks now. But on the front is this story that Dennis Chastain wrote about the new overlook and historical marker that's on SC11. So on March 18th, the grand opening was held to mark a freshly paved scenic overlook on SC11, which is at Grant Meadow. And you got a great view of Table Rock right there. The event also featured the unveiling of a new historical marker sponsored by the Pickens County, and by the Pickens County Historical Society that tells the story of Table Rock Mountain before it became a state park in the 1930s. And I'm going to show you the 2 sides of the historical marker here and just let you take a look at it if you haven't seen it yet. I'll give you just a moment to read that. And Grant Meadow may be, if it's not the most photographed place in South Carolina, it's definitely, I think, the most photographed one in the upstate of South Carolina. There may be some places in the low country that get more photographs, but it's definitely one of the most, I mean, people always stop there, take pictures all the time anyway. And it was kind of a traffic hazard. So now we have this great overlook there where people can stop and safely take a beautiful picture of Table Rock Mountain and then learn a little of the history here about it. The Hawk Watch is, you know, it won't be that long. I mean, I know it seems really hot now and humid, but it'll be September before we know it. And the folks up there, Ed Moore and company, will be on the overlook up there counting hawks. They set a record last year during the Sassafras Mountain Hawk Watch. It was the 7th year, so they'd been up there for you know, several years before we put the overlook up there, because I had to go up there one time and cut a path through mostly catbriers, it seemed like, to get Ed Moore up there when they were going to start counting. So I was really happy when the overlook got finished. I know he was really happy too. Last year they counted 12,326 raptors, and of course the majority of that was broadwing hawks, including September 25th when they counted 4,267 broadwing hawks, which is pretty amazing. out of that number of record number of hawks, there were 5,469 turkey vultures. And here, I think this picture was taken during COVID, during the COVID time, because they're kind of keeping their distance from the folks up on the overlook. And in there, I noticed the sign there about keeping your distance away from the counters. But that's a great thing to have up there. I think it's just a wonderful addition to the Caesar's Head Hawk Watch that goes on simultaneously. This is my last slide. I wanted to share this with y'all. It was just yesterday that this photograph was taken by the who I would consider a very famous photographer, Bill Robertson. And this waterfalls which I'd never been to before. In fact, I'd never even heard of it. It's a little hard to get to, harder than I thought. When I lit out with Bill yesterday, and it's behind the Christian Retreat Center that's near East Atoy Valley, called Hart Ridge. Formerly, some of y'all might remember there was a girls' camp there called Victorious Valley. But I thought that this was like close to the retreat, but it's not. It's way back in the woods, and it's pretty hard to get to, and it's actually pretty sketchy to get to that point where Bill took that picture. But it reminds me that there's so many treasures back there, familiar ones like the Overlook and Table Rock and some of our beautiful areas, but there are also lots of hidden treasures within the Jocassee Gorges area that I think people will be discovering for years to come. So, y'all, I'll be glad to. I'm gonna stop the sharing here, Dan, and let's see. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Well, I had a question. That last waterfall there, is that on Upper Mill Creek? Off the Palmetto Trail?
I don't think it's Mill Creek, but it's close to that, Dan. That's where we went. We went in there near Mill Creek and went in behind the retreat center. I don't know, Dan. It was quite the expedition to get there, and I was not prepared. I was expecting just a little stroll in the woods, so I didn't take food or water, and that was a big mistake. But it was a beautiful place, and of course, Bill turned it into an absolutely gorgeous photograph.
Yeah, he does. He's got a knack for that.
Oh, he really does. He's really an artist with a camera. So yeah, if anybody has any kind of questions, even general SCDNR questions, I'll be glad to field them. Kate, I don't think I took up 45 minutes, but I made a valiant effort at it.
I'm looking at the chat box.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
It's spelling of East Atoy with 2 E's or 1 E.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think someone from the U.S. Geological Survey back in the 50s, the 30s, the 40s, whenever they did that, they took that extra E off, which to me always makes perfect sense, because all the other Cherokee derived names like Jocassee and Oconee and Tomasi, they all have the double E's. It seems like East Atoy should too, but we've got numerous places within DNR maps that show East Atoy, Creek Heritage Preserve, and it'll just have the 1 E. I always spell it with 2 E's, but and I always put it with 2 E's in the Jocassee Journal newsletter. So that's just that's always kind of been my stand on it. I don't know how that ciphers with others.
There's a question about is there a public access point for the Waterfall Heritage Preserve?
For Waterfall?
Yes.
I don't think so. There's not a great public access. That's
in that Peachtree Road. Isn't that a place you can go in?
Yeah.
Peach Orchard Branch.
Road, yeah.
Access area, and then walk up there. You can get there from there, and that's not a bad walk.
Yeah, I walk in there all the time. I was the one that first called out Waterco when Patrick and I got up there, but But yeah, that back way in through Peach Orchard is a nice little hike in there. It's not too far. It's uphill on the way in, but it's downhill on the way back. And you get up there on those at ridge top, and once you get on the ridge top, you can just go for miles and miles. Great views, great plants, and some extremely large trees. And so and again, so you get the best of both. You get to go East Atoy Creek River there. You get to go by that and see one of the more prettier sections of it, and then you get on up to across the power line right away, and you get up on the ridge top, and again, great views. And so you don't quite get up down on the slopes where all the rich stuff is, but you can get there, but you'll have to get off trail.
And Peach Orchard Branch is a great wildflower area. I usually take my Ollie Jocassee Gorges class in there, and it's not a far walk, and there's some really beautiful wildflowers there in April.
Another area that I will let everyone know is really kind of keen on my radar screen. I go there often is Cane Creek, and Cane Creek is like the back way in there. And so that road into Cane Creek is a very easy walk. And the wildflowers, once you get to Cane Creek, just turn upstream, and there's some trails that go upstream, little foot trails, small trails, but some of the really nice collection of wildflowers in there. There's some Macone Bell and other things in there that most people don't see off the beaten path there. So I only live about 10 minutes from there, so I spend a lot of time in there.
Greg,
go ahead. I'm sorry, Dan.
Would you tell the group about the 1996-97 purchase, selling of the to the state of South Carolina, North Carolina, of the Gorges area by Duke?
Sure. Yeah. Duke had for years talked about what it was going to do with its forestry lands, which back then were mostly crescent land and timber lands. And then all of a sudden, development potential had become pretty much on the horizon, that you could make more money out of developing land. And Duke told South Carolina DNR and Dr. James Timmerman, who luckily for us had kept in touch with Duke for years about those lands, and said, if y'all ever let them go, please give us first shot. And so Duke gave the state of South Carolina about a year to come up with the funds, and a lot of coalition partners, conservation organizations joined together. David Beasley came up with a $10 million bond. There was a donation, an anonymous donation through the Conservation Fund of $10 million. And then, lots of folks like State Parks and Clemson University and the Nature Conservancy, and people like, the Native Plant Society, the Foothills Trail Conservancy, all joined together and made it a reality, where South Carolina purchased 33,000 acres, and the state of North Carolina purchased about 10,000 acres. So it was a great conservation. It was a partnership, is what it was. And if South Carolina and North Carolina had not gotten those lands, we might have seen a lot. And I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything against gated developments and golf courses, but there would have been a lot more of those up in the especially the South Carolina mountains than there are. So now all these lands are open to the public, to be enjoyed by the public for all kinds of recreation. So it was a monumental achievement.
Thank you. And then there was a question: are there still lots of Calorie Pears on Sassafras?
It seems like there are a lot of Calorie Pears everywhere, Dan. And I'm sure. Oh my goodness, that's just like a tree gone wild. But I know that our wildlife folks try to keep an eye on things like that. And I just Rick, I texted Ken Forrester about the Buddleia, so hopefully he'll have that on his watch list. That was one I didn't know about. But that's definitely something we need to keep an eye on.
There was a question about the handicap ramp at Sassafras, accessing to the bottom of it.
That one hurts me. I applied for a grant, the same grant that gave us the trail up the ADA trail, but it's not paved. The same grant cycle that gave us that, I applied for a grant to pave that trail. But and I understand why State Park, well, it's a coalition, that recreational trails program. So a lot of people make the decision, but Sassafras had gotten so much money in a short period of time for both that mobility impaired trail and then the beach bottom trail, which gave money to it. So the powers that be decided that they could not give us another grant. My wildlife folks at DNR say that we're going to pave that ADA accessible mobility trail. You got two ways you can go up. You can go up by the mobility impaired trail, which is like a crusher run surface, and it is not easy to push a wheelchair up there. It's the grade is fine, but it's just, it's not a good surface for a wheelchair. The other way up the concrete ramp, that's shorter, but it's very steep. I've seen people going down on that in wheelchairs, and I've always been scared that one of their wheelchairs is going to get away because it's a really, really steep. That's really an emergency access road. That's not but a lot of I'd say probably about 75% of the people, it seems like, go up that way instead of the trail. I think the trail is much more pleasant, and it kind of gives you a view you get a view to the west and you get a view to the south, but we will get that trail paved, and when we get the mobility impaired trail paved, that's going to be the way that people decide to go up, and that will definitely be the way that people with a wheelchair and walkers and people that are mobility impaired, that'll be the way, and that'll be nice because then everybody can get up there, and that's the idea, is to get everybody up there.
Well, I don't see any more questions on the chat. If you have a question, unmute yourself and shout it out before Greg gets away.
Thank y'all so much for having me. It's so nice to be in front of a group like this. I know that I don't know everybody here, but I know y'all. I know your type of people, and I love y'all. And it's a pleasure to talk to people that think like I do. Because when I go to a Rotary Club, or a group where where not everybody is a conservation enthusiast, you get some interesting questions. It's nice to be in a room full of like-minded people.
Amen on that.
Well, I thank you for giving me all the heads up on those the alum root and the Tunbridge fern. I'm gonna, next time I see Sam Tessel, I'm gonna apply her for some more information on that.
Good.
All right. Thank y'all again. I guess I can go ahead and mute myself now, right? Or do I need to stay open?
Well, I think we're just going to close. I think that's all the questions we have. And I want to say again, thank you, Greg. I enjoyed seeing you again, and we'll see you soon.
Oh, it was great seeing y'all. Thank y'all.
So no program in August, and we'll be back in September with Patrick McMillan.
Yep. Good deal. We got some good programs coming up too. And as we get into the fall, we got some great other programs in here. We have in November, I'm going to talk about the Black River State Park, and I'm looking forward to that, showcasing that part that we just finished the master plan on, my firm. And that report is out in the public now, I think, so I can talk more about it. So again, I look forward to sharing that new state park for South Carolina.
Good to see you again, Charlie Williams.
Yeah, good to see you, Charlie.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you doing a program like this so that I can join in.
All right, good night, everybody.
All right, good night, everybody.
Night.
Night, everybody. Night, Dan.